thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us, and lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Thank you. Excellent. Honourable members, good morning. You've just had a bit of an experience of what it's like when we start Parliament this morning. I'd like to start by respectfully acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we gather today, the Yagara and Turrbal people, and pay my deepest respects to elders past, present and emerging. We are very lucky in this country to have two of the oldest living continuing cultures in the world in Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people whose lands, winds and waters we all have the privilege of sharing. I'd like to acknowledge the Gold Coast Youth Parliament here today, and I'd also like to start by introducing myself because I don't think I've met all of you before. My name is Megan Scanlon. I'm normally the member for Gavin and the Minister for Housing, but today I'm the acting Speaker. And it's a great privilege to have you here in the Parliament today. When I was first elected to the Parliament, I sit over there, I used to sit up the back, and I was 24 years old, which at the time made me the youngest woman to ever be elected to the Queensland Parliament. I'm now a Cabinet Minister, and which makes me the youngest Cabinet Minister we've had in Queensland. And so I always love seeing young people in Queensland who are interested in politics and government and the process of how we make laws. And I think you'll have a great opportunity today to have some really interesting conversations and debates. I never got the opportunity to come to this house when I was at school, but I did go to the federal parliament, and that's actually what got me really interested in politics and how laws can have a really big impact on our community and on our society. And I had a really great Year 7 teacher who taught me about the separation of powers, who taught me about the political process around preferential voting and all of those things that I'm sure that you're learning about. But what I wanted to say to you this morning is to really think about the opportunity that you've got today. Today you get to sit in the seats of the Premier, you get to sit in the seats of Cabinet Ministers, of backbench caucus members, of the opposition leader, the shadow cabinet. We also have our independent members and members of the minor parties. We all get to make up Queensland and sit in these seats. And each and every time we come to Parliament, we all have to really think about not only how we're representing our communities, but how the laws that we debate in this place will have an impact on the communities that we represent and what type of Queensland we want to leave for the next generation. So I really encourage you to think about those things while you're in these seats today, because it is an enormous privilege to be a Member of Parliament, to sit in these seats and to make laws that have an impact on people, hopefully a positive impact, but they can also have a negative impact. And so it's a big responsibility that you've got here today to have a debate and talk about the issues that are important here in Queensland. The other thing I'd say is, this is really only one part of your job as a Member of Parliament. We also, as Members of Parliament, have communities that we represent. And so we're not here every day of the week. We're here a lot of the year, but we also go back to our communities. I live in Nerang and my electorate's the electorate of Gavin. And we go and do mobile offices. I set up my desk in front of the Coles or Woolworths, and community members can come up and tell me what issues are important to them. We get to go and visit schools. You've probably met some of your local MPs on the Gold Coast. We do lots of other work outside of this place, but this is a really important part of the work that we do as Members of Parliament. And so with that said, I want to welcome all of the students from all Gold Coast schools today. I understand that we have Elanora State School, Somerset College, Coomera State School, Bigara Waters State School, Hillcrest Christian College, Hillcrest Virtual Learning Community and Upper Coomera State College. These schools make up the government on my right, so congratulations for being on the government side today. We also welcome the schools making up the opposition on the left, and the opposition is a really important role. You get to hold the government to account and you get to also represent your communities, and we have schools from King's Christian College, Springbrook State School, Coolangatta State School and Musgrave Hill State School. Some of you might know Guardian Angels and Aquinas College. That's the school that I went to on the Gold Coast, who aren't with us today, but if you know anyone, let them know I said hi. So Thank you very much for your participation, and I should acknowledge Mark Boothman, the member for Theodore up the back I've just seen, and there'll be other members of Parliament who join us today and will take over this spot as the acting Speaker. Some of the things that we do in Parliament to encourage one another is we say hear, hear. So when you're not allowed to clap in Parliament, you say hear, hear if you support something that someone's saying. There's a whole range of other things that you can say where you might disagree or you agree, and all of those are protocols that have been in place for many, many years. So it feels a little bit weird, and you probably see on TV when someone's saying something and you hear lots of people say hear, hear, that's instead of clapping. So if you agree with something, make sure you say it to give your student classmates a word of encouragement. But I just want to say congratulations and thank you for today, and without further ado, I declare the Gold Coast Primary Schools Youth Parliament officially open. Thank you. Now, and apologies, I'm not usually the acting Speaker, so I'm just following my script here as well. I call the Youth Premier.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Today, I would like to share with the House some of the wonders and events of Queensland. With our beautiful vast beaches, tropical rainforests and wonderful cities and our awesome outback, Queensland is built for tourists. We get people who want to snorkel along the vibrant Great Barrier Reef in our 300 days of sunshine to people who want to bushwalk the tropical jungles of Cairns. We have world-famous attractions like the theme parks on the Gold Coast and the Great Barrier Reef in Cairns. And you can't forget the World Surf Reserves on the beaches of the Gold Coast and Noosa Heads. These are places where people flock every year to have the times of their lives. But it is not only tourism that we focus on. We are also working on the continual development of the cities. There is a light rail going in along the Gold Coast Highway to make transportation easier and put an end to traffic jams. Also, in 2032, Brisbane, the fastest growing city in Australia, will be holding the Olympic Games, which will be amazing. The government is upgrading the Gabba, which will include a drop-in swimming pool, and it will be converted into a music venue after the Games, with an athletics track that is going in nearby. We are also continuously working on the universities, trying to make them even better than they already are. Like, have you heard some of the amazing groundbreaking innovations that they're achieving? And how about the performance of the Matildas? That thriller win against France in Brisbane set my bones shaking. Crazy. With billions of dollars in the bank for future projects, I'm safe to say that Queensland will never stop growing. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Premier. I now call the Youth Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to call your attention to the lack of recycling at our school. It has been brought to my attention that the school receives large fines for incorrectly sorted rubbish and recycling. These large fines imposed on the school make it not economically viable to run a recycling program. This means that all rubbish collected at our school is sent to landfill, and that these plastics will slowly break down into the well-publicised problem of microplastics. These microplastic particles then make their way into the ecosystem and into our food chain. While it is important to sort the recycling, I feel that the disincentive of the fine for incorrectly sorted recycling far outweighs the incentive to recycle. This will impact the future environmental practices of sustainability in Queensland schools, which will have a ripple effect on my generation for years to come. What we would like to see is an educational program developed by the Queensland Government and local councils on how to sort and recycle all rubbish. This educational program needs to be targeted at all levels of schooling, from pre-prep to year 12, to have a positive impact, and should be included in the curriculum for all students. It needs to be simple enough for the pre-preps to understand and impactful enough to affect change in the older teenagers. Future investment is required to develop technology to make better use of recycling. For example, where old tyres have been recycled and made into softball for playgrounds. My generation has to be the turning point for environmental change. With the correct programs in place, we can influence the people in our own homes and those within the wider community, thereby creating change across Queensland for generations to come. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Leader of the Opposition. And I should say too, as the former Environment Minister in Good News, we have a Get It Sorted campaign that will be rolled out in schools very shortly. So a great contribution from both of you. Thank you. I now call the Minister for Transport.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move that this Youth Parliament supports that all new vehicles sold in Queensland must be electrically powered within the next 5 years, and that autonomous self-driving vehicles are banned from Queensland roads, including that all public transport should be made free for anyone used in a major metropolitan area. Transport is one of the main functions of our lives, and it's important we make it perfect for the community. First, we strongly suggest that all new vehicles sold in Queensland must be electrically powered within the next 5 years so that we can be more sustainable and eco-friendly to our planet. According to Earth Justice, we only have 10 years left before the Earth's temperature rises to an irreversible point from carbon emissions. Secondly, independent self-driving vehicles should be banned from Queensland roads. They seem amazing, but they can cause fatal accidents. Finally, all public transport should be made free to use for anyone living in an urban area. People will certainly use it if it's free and will decrease traffic and pollution. One bus holding 300 people can emit less carbon emissions than 10 individual cars, therefore increasing the health of the environment. We hope we can work towards making these goals happen. Thank you for your time, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Youth Minister for Transport. I now call the Youth Shadow Minister for Transport.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise today to inform the House of the following opposing motions that will be put forward today. The member for Mossman will inform the House on why all new vehicles should not be electrically powered within the next 5 years. This is a motion being pushed forward despite the negative impact this could have on families. The member for Maroonville will inform the House on why autonomous vehicles, or otherwise known as self-driving vehicles, should remain on Queensland's roads. This is an exciting future developmental project, no doubt. The member for Maranoa will inform the House and raise some important points regarding why public transport shouldn't be free in metropolitan areas. This will be both informative and passionate viewpoints being put before you today. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Shadow Minister for Transport. I now call the Youth Member for Kandenga.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Today, we would like to draw to your attention to the fact that public transport should be made free to use for anyone living in a major metropolitan area. Science shows that in 2018, 13% of Queensland's emissions came from transport. Dear Speaker, have you ever considered the number of emissions free transport could reduce? Queensland cannot wait for traffic lights to turn green. With public transportation, we can decrease the amount of traffic on our roads. Furthermore, free transportation benefits our growing economy through spending money previously used as fuel money on goods and services. Did you know that the average Australian spends $123.40 per month on their vehicle's fuel? This money could be spent on supporting jobs within our community and so much more, and our state would benefit. Public transport must be made cost-free immediately to anyone living in a major metropolitan area. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Youth Member for Kandenga. I now call the Youth Member for Pioneer.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Today I would like to share with the House that I disagree that autonomous self-driving vehicles should be banned from Queensland roads. There are many benefits of using self-driving vehicles. More efficient travel, decreased traffic flow, easier access for disabled and elderly, elimination of human error while driving, and reduced vehicle crashes. This year alone, 163 people have lost their lives on Queensland roads, and there were 300 fatalities in 2022. Hospitals have spent $3.2 million between 2016 and 2020 on helping patients from car-related accidents. Keeping self-driving vehicles on our roads will save many lives and reduce likeliness of fatalities from car accidents on our Queensland roads. I know I want to grow up with safe roads. Do you? Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Well said, Youth Member for Pioneer. Before I call the next member, I would just like to acknowledge Coolangatta State School and Eleanor State School who are in the chamber today as the State Member for Currumbin. Those are two very special schools to me. And Member for Pioneer, you are sitting in the seat where I have to sit in the chamber. So welcome, Member for Pioneer. The next member I will call is Youth Member for Johnston.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm pleased to present the topic of turning all cars into electric cars in the span of the next 5 years. There are many positive reasons that this should happen, and I will share a few of them with you all today. The first reason is that electric motors are a lot simpler and have less moving parts than our combustion engines, resulting in less maintenance and less things that can go wrong with your vehicle's engine. A tremendous win. In addition, electric cars are much quieter than our traditional cars, thereby reducing noise pollution in our busy cities or on our country roads. Lastly, and most importantly, Mrs. Speaker, is that electric cars are powered by electricity. They don't produce any greenhouse gases and no more dirty smog. If the power is sourced from renewable resources such as solar, wind, thermal or hydroelectricity, changing to electric-powered cars, it will go a long way to ensuring that we all have a cool planet that we can enjoy long into our old age. Thank you all for listening to my speak today. I would now like to hand you back to Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Member for Johnstone. A very enthusiastic contribution. I call the member for Pike.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise to speak against the motion that all new vehicles sold in Queensland must be electrically powered within the next 5 years. Most electric cars are extremely expensive, so to force Queenslanders to purchase a new car, even if their precious one is still working perfectly, is outrageous. There are about 8,000 electric cars currently in Queensland and only 300 charging points. Where is everyone going to charge their cars? This is a great plan to save our environment, but 5 years is too short of time. I believe in the future we should all aim for all Queenslanders to be driving electric cars, but to try and make this happen within 5 years seems impossible. We need more time to provide enough charging points all across Queensland, and we need to give car companies enough time to build electric cars. Trying to force Queenslanders to purchase new cars over $60,000 whilst facing inflation of rent, housing, groceries and bills is just unfair and unjust. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Member for Pike. A very good contribution. I call the member for Isaac.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Today, I'd like to inform the House of why automated cars should be banned from Queensland roads. Imagine cruising along the highway in your self-driving car when crash. Takes only one glitch, one error in the codes, or one hacker to cause havoc in cities, towns, and especially highways. Madam Speaker, you cannot have automated cars until we know they are safe. There is no data available, absolutely none, that can show these driverless cars are 100% safe. My opposition can't present that because the safety isn't there. What the research does show is that there will be an increase of cars on the road if automated cars are allowed. Less carpooling, less people taking public transport, more congestion. Before I leave you, Take a moment to think what would happen if a hacker took control of your automated car. What could they do? Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Member for Isaac. Another wonderful contribution. I call the member for Ward.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Today I would like to share with the House that I strongly disagree with the motion that all public transport should be made free for all residents living in a major metropolitan area. I believe that transportation should be free for all residents living in Queensland and not just those living in a metropolitan area. The metropolitan area of Queensland only consists of 190 suburbs, and yet there are 1,117 suburbs in Queensland as of 2022. Further to that, only 50% of the Queensland population live in the metropolitan area, and this motion would be discriminating against 50% of our state's population. Increased use of public transportation would also provide massive savings to the Queensland state budget due to less demand for road construction and repairs. Free public transport would minimise people's living expenses, including fuel, car loans, vehicle maintenance, registration and insurance. I believe we need to rethink this motion and change it so it is fair and equitable for all Queenslanders, not just metropolitan residents. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Well said, Member for Ward. I call the member for Archer.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Queensland Government's zero-emission vehicle strategy shows its commitment to achieving zero net emissions by 2050. The strategy sets out action plans to achieve 50% new passenger vehicle sales to be zero emissions by 2030 and 100% by 2036. However, we feel more needs to be done. We want 100% of passenger vehicles on the road to be fully electrical within the next 5 years. This would require increased investment in high-speed public charging infrastructure. We also ask for the upfront vehicle cost subsidy to be increased to $10,000. Apps to show the location of high-speed charging stations and demand is beneficial. We ask the Queensland Government to seriously consider these options for the sake of future generations. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Well said, Member for Mossman. Oh, Archer, sorry. I call the member for Mossman.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Today I rise and stand before you to present my argument against the motion of making all new vehicles electrically powered within the next 5 years. Although I am opposing this movement, I'm not against electric vehicles. Instead, I'm against the period given as well as the cost of adopting EVs. I believe it is clear that the cost of electric cars is too high to make all vehicles electronically powered. According to carsguide.com, the cheapest fully electric car is the MG ZS EV, which is $44,990. This is in comparison to the cheapest internal combustion powered car, the Kia Picanto S. The cost of this car is $16,920, a $28,000 difference. The average car buyer could not afford this and most likely will not be able to save up the extra money for another 6 to 12 months. To conclude, although I believe electric vehicles are our future, they are currently too expensive and we must wait until technology is better, which may take upwards of 20 years. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Member for Mossman. A very well-reasoned argument. I call the member for Kaluka.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We would like to state that autonomous vehicles should be banned from Queensland roads. In Queensland, we only allow a certain level of automatic controlling in vehicles. Are we willing to change this law just so people can drive easier? If we become too reliant on these vehicles, we won't be able to learn the skills that driving provides us with. Our reflexes will deteriorate, causing problems in other activities. We would also be getting rid of jobs that involve driving, like taxi and Uber drivers. Fully autonomous cars also may not reduce the number of road accidents due to faults or bugs. In fact, in 2022, there were around 400 road accidents involved with self-driving cars in America. We don't want that to happen in Queensland. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you for Member for Kulua. Very well-reasoned argument as well. I call the member for Maroonbull. Did I say that right, member for Maroonbull? Yes, okay. I call the member for Maroonbull.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Today I rise to inform the House that self-driving cars should not be banned on Queensland roads. Some people say that self-driving cars are dangerous and unsafe, but do they know the facts? Did you know that 1.3 million people die in car crashes yearly worldwide, and 94% of those crashes comes from driver error? Driver error is when the driver makes an error. For example, the driver accidentally accelerates, speeds, and drives while drunk. AI-coded cars don't make the same mistakes. Humans are notoriously error-prone, while computer code is accurate and reliable. As well as being safer, self-driving cars are also better for the environment. Isn't this what we all want, a safer and sustainable future for all? Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, member for Maroonbull. A very well-reasoned argument. I call the member for Albert.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Today I'd like to propose an idea to the House to make all public transport free. Making public transport free is an easy way to stimulate our struggling economy. This idea keeps money in people's pockets to spend at small businesses in the local area instead. This proposal could positively impact the lives of people who are doing it tough financially. Free public transport allows citizens to access employment opportunities such as job interviews, part-time or full-time work, without the burden of transport costs. Free public transport literally opens streets to employment, education and training, not to mention the elderly who most of the time are trying to make their pension stretch. Would you want your grandma walking home with the groceries because they can't afford a bus? I think not. For these reasons and many more, it is clearly essential to make all public transport free now. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, member for Albert. A very well-delivered contribution, member for Albert. I call the member for Marona, or Maranoa.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Today I inform this House of why public transport shouldn't be made free for people living in metropolitan areas. Being a busy area, the money that people are paying for public transport goes back into the government and the community and helps pay for employee wages. Public transport shouldn't be free because the government funding doesn't cover all the cost of the transport and repairs for vehicles that are used for public transport. If you don't pay for public transport, then every passenger will have to pay more taxes because they get a free ride. Taxes are going to increase more and more because people are potentially going to get free rides. So that's why public transport shouldn't be free for metropolitan areas. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, member for Maranoa. An excellent contribution. I call the youth member for Flinders.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Petrol-controlled cars can be fancy, like Lamborghinis, but do you really know the negative impact they have on our environment? As the youth member for Flinders, I am supporting the fact that all cars sold in the next 5 years should be electrically powered. The way we get petrol cars can cause many diseases. Workers in oil refineries have a high risk of cancer of the lip, stomach, liver, pancreas, connective tissue, prostate, eye, brain, and blood. This affects our well-being in daily life. Petrol-controlled cars contribute to air pollution and carbon dioxide, a greenhouse gas. There are way more benefits of having electric cars. One of them is that they are fancier. Who doesn't like a smart, smooth-driving car that does not pollute the environment? Some other benefits include 1. Costs. It can be so much cheaper by not spending your money on petrol.
2. Electric cars make the air cleaner and do not pollute our atmosphere. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Youth Member for Flinders. Another very well delivered contribution. I call the Youth Member for Rankin.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise to speak against the motion that all new vehicles sold must be electrically powered within the next 5 years. Although electric vehicles are incredibly sustainable and great to invest in, 5 years is not enough time. On the Gold Coast alone, there are over 609,000 registered vehicles and only 300 charging stations in all of Queensland. Despite the fact electrically powered vehicles decrease dependence on fossil fuels, not everybody can afford to pay $61,000 for a car with disposal and recycling risks. Electric cars use non-renewable electricity just like regular vehicles do, meaning that at the moment they're not a necessity. The average EV takes almost 8 hours to charge, whereas you can refill a motor car within 5 minutes. Therefore, they have really short ranges and incredibly long charging times. To make matters worse, electric vehicles lose charge when parked, leaving drivers possibly no more energy after being parked for certain periods of time. Since electrically powered vehicles are a great alternative, I fully support the manufacturing of them. However, making them compulsory within 5 years is completely cruel and unjust to the less fortunate communities. In conclusion, I have no doubt in my mind that there will not be enough time.
Thank you,
Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Member for Rankin. An excellently delivered speech. I call the Youth Member for Emberley.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Today I'm supporting the government motion that autonomous self-driving vehicles being banned from Queensland roads. Currently in Queensland and in all states and territories of Australia, the use of autonomous self-driving vehicles is banned. I believe that self-driving vehicles should stay banned because of the following reasons experienced in the USA. In San Francisco, reported by NBC News, one recent incident reported by city officials that 5 disabled Cruise robotaxis blocked a street so completely that a bus with 45 passengers couldn't get through and were delayed for 13 minutes. Also, there has been continuous incidents where robo-taxis without drivers stopped in the middle of the street, delaying bus services and disrupting work of firefighters. California regulators ordered Uber to remove its self-driving vehicles from the road on the same day that the company's vehicles were caught running red lights. In Phoenix, a self-driving Uber test vehicle struck and killed a woman in 2018. These incidences reinforce why autonomous cars need to remain banned. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Member for Emberley. An excellent contribution. I call the Youth Member for Endeavour.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise to speak on the motion introduced by the Minister for Transport that all public transport should be made free to use in any major metropolitan area. If trains, buses and trams were free to use, there would be less people having to use their own vehicles. A bus can carry up to 60 passengers. Imagine one bus on the road or 60 individual cars. Everybody knows that if there are less cars on the road and more people using public transport, then there would be less pollution. Cars are a source of greenhouse gas, polluting our metropolitan areas. According to climatecouncil.org.au, transport is Australia's third largest source of greenhouse gases. As we all know, greenhouse gases are responsible for climate change, a major environmental issue of our time. Environmental concerns should always be the number one priority for a responsible government. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Youth Member for Endeavour. An excellent contribution. I call the Youth Member for Boulogne.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Imagine Queensland where the air is cleaner, the streets are quieter, and our environment thrives. This vision can become a reality by embracing electric vehicles. Today, I stand before you to advertise a future where all vehicles in Queensland are electrically powered within the next 5 years. The number of fossil fuels and toxic gases normal cars produce is a great concern to the Queensland community. However, by abolishing the pollution of today's vehicles and by transitioning to new electric vehicles, we can sustain a healthy, green, thriving environment for Queensland. Despite the larger costs, this will be leading to lower maintenance, leading to lower costs and savings for families and businesses. As the world evolves toward electrically powered vehicles, we have an opportunity to be leaders in this movement and can ensure that our beaches remain pristine and our skies clear for generations to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Youth Member for Boulogne. An excellent delivered speech. Can I call the Youth Member for Armadillo next?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Autonomous self-driving vehicles must be banned from Queensland roads. They are a threat to safety, to the environment, and to jobs of innocent civilians. They must be stopped. Imagine you're cruising along the highway in your brand new self-driving car when suddenly the sensors malfunction and you find yourself being thrown through the front windscreen. The next thing you know, you're in hospital for 6 months. This never would have happened if you stayed with your same old, normal car with no crazy computers or the like. And speaking of computers, the ones used to run these cars emit a large amount of greenhouse gases, and even more per year than the whole of Argentina. This could make many Queenslanders sick and put them out of work. Something else that could put them out of work is actually driving self-driving cars. With the advanced technology, no one will be using taxis, buses or trains anymore. Imagine the impact to the economy. So, because self-driving cars are a threat to safety, to the environment and to jobs, you now know they must be banned from Queensland roads. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Youth Member for Armadillo. That was fantastic. I call the Youth Member for Ithaca. Did I say that correctly, Youth Member? Ithaca?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Public transport for all major metropolitan residents should be free. Citizens should be able to travel to school, work and explore the wonders of our urban landscape without being limited by the cost. Making public transport accessible to all will not only alleviate the financial burdens on families and individuals, but also cultivate a sense of community and equality. Moreover, free public transport contributes to a greener environment by reducing traffic congestion and air pollution. This isn't just about convenience, it's about creating a more inclusive, sustainable and vibrant city for us and generations to come. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Youth Member for Ithaca. Another excellent contribution. Is there anyone on the speaking list who I have not called? Anyone else who wishes to make a contribution to this debate? All right. Well, the question is that the motion moved by the Youth Member for Transport be agreed to. Those of that opinion say aye. Aye. Those against say no. No. Divide. Yes. A division has been called. Ring the bells. So kids, these bells will ring for 1 minute, right? And all of us parliamentarians have to run into the chamber and make sure we're sitting in our seats when the bell finishes ringing. Close the bars. Because if we're not in our seats when that bar closes, we don't get to vote. The question is that the motion be agreed to for which a division has been called. Will the government whip please advise what the government votes are for the ayes and the no, or the noes?
55 ayes and 55 noes. Madam Speaker. 55 ayes, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Government Whip. Will the Opposition Whip please advise what the opposition votes are for the ayes or the noes?
33 noes, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Opposition Whip. Honourable members, the result of the division is 55 ayes and 33 noes. The division is resolved in the affirmative. It is now time for the private members' statements. And I'll hand over to the member for Coomera.
Good morning, youth members. Welcome to the Parliament. I'm the State Member for Coomera on the Northern Gold Coast. I know some of the members here I've looked in with interest reside in the Northern Gold Coast, and I welcome you especially. As just been pointed out, we have private member statements. It's now time for the private member statements, and I call the youth member for Jardine.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today I would like to bring attention to the need for additional physical education classes in the school curriculum. At present, Queensland schools allocate about 30 minutes to PE per school week. I would like to see this to an increase to at least 2 hours per week to encourage healthy habits in Queensland students at a young age. Additional PE training could increase the attention and concentration of students in class. This could make teaching subjects a lot easier for teachers, as their students would be more engaged in class. Hand-eye coordination drills and a focus on building core athletic skills could give Queensland students the confidence to play team sports outside of school. Team sports promote healthy habits and create valuable new friendship groups for students as they head to high school. I believe that the increased level of activity would go a long way towards reducing childhood obesity. The additional exercise could provide confidence in students and help address mental health issues like depression and anxiety. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Member for Jardine. A very worthwhile contribution. I call the member for Palmer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I draw the attention of the House to a pressing concern in the community, the issue of youth crime. In everyone's local community, it's becoming evident that many young residents are getting involved in unlawful activities. Yet it often appears that the consequences the court gives them are insufficient. The judicial system sometimes feels a bit lenient towards younger people, and this raises concerns. I do not take pleasure in seeing harsh punishments, but I do believe it is required for our fellow peers to comprehend the significance of accountability. Moreover, we are challenged with a situation where the number of law enforcement officers is poor compared to the amount of young individuals involved in criminal offences. This imbalance between officers and criminals creates challenges in maintaining order and safety. As many of you are adults, I'm sure that all of you share a common concern for the well-being of the community. Together, we must cooperatively work towards clear guidelines and an increased presence of responsible adults to guide and support us. I appreciate your attention to this matter. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Member for Palmer. A very worthwhile contribution, and certainly something that is a challenge for Queensland. I call the youth member for Boyne.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today I would like to share with the House to discuss the issue of land clearing. I truly hope land clearing in Queensland will decrease because it depletes our biodiversity by destroying habitats and killing native animals. We need to keep our ecosystem intact so that we have a healthy and sustainable environment. Our natural habitats are very important to our health as forested lands produces oxygen and provides home for animals. We all depend on our environment to sustain a well-being and lifestyle in Queensland. Where we live on the southern Gold Coast, land clearing has resulted in koalas and other native animals venturing into suburban areas where they are often at high risk of injury. Thank you for listening. I hope this issue can be resolved. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Member for Boyne. Certainly the koala the issue of koalas and how our urban centres are growing and spreading across the Gold Coast and other parts of Queensland really is a challenge. So a very well put argument. I call the youth member for O'Connell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today I would like to address to the House about the large traffic problems in Queensland, specifically Pimpama. According to theage.com.au, Pimpama has so much traffic because in the Brisbane and Gold Coast city centres, population increase and the percentage of residents who drive to work are partly exacerbating the severity of the city's peak hours. And according to the 2016 Australian Bureau of Statistics census, data showed that 72.2% of people there, especially in Brisbane, travel to work by car. And the reason why Pimpama is affected by this is because we're between both of the city centres. Many of our residents have to travel along our busy highways to get to either of those places. And it's not just the highway that's busy, but also our local roads, which are caused by our large residential areas, which are too big for our fewer roads. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Member for O'Connell, and I can... Thank you, Member for O'Connell, and I can also add to your concerns. I have a great concern. It's very close to my heart, and in fact, 70% of the population of the Coomera electorate have at least 2 vehicles. So that adds to the additional the congestion on the northern Gold Coast and around Pimpama, which is the fastest growing suburb in the state. I call the youth member for Coolabah.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today I would like to share with the House my concerns about the high-rises being constructed along our beaches. I want to bring attention to the buildings that are being put up. I think this is a problem for the Gold Coast, not only for the people who have a view of the beach, but for everyone who wishes to enjoy our natural surroundings. As we put up high-rises, we should definitely enforce a height limit. We don't want shadows cast over our sunny sand that people walk on every day. As a local, I like coming down to the beach, remembering my family and I running across the sand. But as I see new towers being built, it makes me worry for our community, because these changes will affect our future and we may forget the connection with our coast that we share. The high-rises that we put up are distracting. I know there must be a better way. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, youth member for Coolabah. You've made some very strong points there. Call the youth member for Moonee.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I am pleased to support the motion that a curfew will apply to all internet-connected devices for students in Queensland primary schools. Students will not have access to internet or social media sites after 5 p.m. or before 7:30 a.m. This will help curb bullying online, as research has shown that young people are often bullied on social media between these times, which directly impacts their mental health. It will also increase students' sleep so they are more well-rested for school the next day. Finally, having this curfew will ensure students to spend more time playing outside and socialising face-to-face with friends, which is something I believe we all need these days. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, member for Moonee. And yes, certainly bullying online is a massive issue right around the world indeed, and we need to find ways to curb that. Call the youth member for Kianga.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The people of the Gold Coast are waiting too long for ambulances. So far, there have been 15 deaths in southeast Queensland that have been linked to ambulance waits. 90% of QAS ambulances have been arriving within 21.5 minutes. Imagine if you needed an ambulance and it took from half an hour to an hour to get to you. How would you feel? We do not want to make our Gold Coast citizens feel afraid because of this horrific cause, and just think what that could lead to. The sooner an ambulance arrives to the patient, the sooner they are treated and the faster they will recover. The longer it takes for an ambulance to reach the patient, the worse the health of the patient will be, and this could end up costing hospitals more money. Without a doubt, we need to make a change and start making more ambulance stations in the hinterlands or places that are far away from the city. It is imperative that we start to make these changes, and this is why I urge the government to spend more money to make this happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Member for Kayanga. Yes, it certainly is a challenging issue and one I share with you the concerns of. The member for Tully, call the youth member for Tully.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to inform the House about the increase in homelessness on the Gold Coast and how there's not enough shelters to accommodate for them. Housing and rental prices are skyrocketing and too many people are forced onto the streets. The average cost for houses are $1.3 million and units are $920,000. In the southern parts of Gold Coast, Coolangatta, there are places locals call Homeless City, where members of our community are homeless and are pitching tents to live in with their pets and their families. Although there are some shelters that can accommodate people for a short amount of time, they usually don't allow pets and have strict rules. However, many homeless people would not abandon their loyal companion and have mental health issues where they need the support. We need to take action to support our community. We need to provide accommodation for everyone who doesn't have their own home. Think about this when you go to bed tonight in your cosy house, nice and warm with your family and pets. Wouldn't you want this for every Queenslander? I know I do. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, youth member for Tully. We all share your concerns in that regard for homelessness, and I know in particular the member for Southport in this House is doing some very proactive work in that space. I call the youth member for Hopewell.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I propose a very important topic at state level. When kids want to play a game or talk on social media, and someone is waiting for them and starts bullying them for their looks, skills, personality, etc., they start to feel insecure and depressed. Regardless of our cruel society that people live in, bullying is never acceptable. Therefore, all stakeholders in education should work together to find ways of dealing with this problem. I stand for this cause and want to end cyberbullying. And my ideas are to educate kids at an early age to make sure that it doesn't spread. We can also prevent cyberbullying by creating an AI that can remove the inappropriate content. Don't listen to me, listen to the numbers. 37% of children associate with depression with online bullying, and 41% of children report that social anxiety is a result of cyberbullying. This needs to stop before it starts. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, member for Hopewell. Yes, bullying, indeed, several years ago I was on a task force charged with the responsibility of looking at cyberbullying, and that task force has developed a report that is being implemented across the state as we speak. Call the youth member for Proserpine.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I've arrived today to speak to Parliament about overfishing in Queensland. The amount of overfishing in Australia, focusing on Queensland, is far too much. We currently should be catching fewer amounts of fish than what we are currently to keep the fish population increasing. Unless we have an issue with pest fish species, there should be limits on number of fish trawlers are allowed to catch. I strongly believe we should increase the size requirements also so the fish have more opportunity to reproduce and we can improve the number of species we currently have. We need to be more thoughtful of our environment and our future. I want a future where we can see steady growth in fish population and appropriate laws surrounding recreational and commercial fishing. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, member for Proserpine. Yes, very challenging issue and something that we all share with you as far as our fish populations are concerned, and we certainly have a wide range of green areas where fishing isn't allowed. But yes, I take your points very strongly put. Call the youth member for Highland.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In Queensland, the average person uses 274 litres of water per day, which is the same volume as 730 cans of soft drinks. A good example of usage that can be improved is time in the shower. A water-efficient showerhead uses approximately 9 litres of water per minute, so having a 20-minute shower uses 135 more litres of water than a 5-minute shower, but you are still just as clean. I submit that there should be a limit on our daily water consumption because there is reasonable evidence that 145 litres of water a day is enough per person. This is cutting back on over half of what average Australians are currently using today to save our valuable resource so that future generations don't have to pay the price for our careless actions. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yeah, thank you, Member for Highland. Living on an acreage block where we rely on tank water, I really do appreciate the comments that you're making there, and I agree. We do certainly need to look at limiting the amount of water that we use. I call the member for Severn.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to draw to the attention of the House Australia's substandard education system and what we can do to improve students' education in Queensland. The funding provided to schools should be focused on providing teachers with hands-on, high-quality learning resources to ensure the time spent in the classroom is productive and efficient. According to the Grattan Institute, the problem with education in Australia is that teachers are having to make things up on the spot, improvise and develop their own resources, taking up time that they would normally spend with their families. This is because they do not have access to a high-quality bank of resources for teaching. What is proposed is that teachers should be given free and high-quality resources to ensure that teachers are given more time for their personal life and that students are given better resources to learn. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Member for Severn. Some very strong arguments put there. Call the member for Bakara.
Today I rise as a youth member for Bakara to bring the attention of the House to the issue of flooding in nearby suburbs from late 2021 to early 2022. Throughout southeast Queensland, over 20,000 homes flooded, which has caused an ongoing housing crisis affecting our state. Many small communities experienced a maximum height of water of almost 23 metres. This is equivalent to the depth that people go diving in. 2 years later, many families are still living in unsuitable housing. Coupled with increasing financial pressures due to rising interest rates, this has become an urgent issue requiring immediate action. I'm proposing an increase in funding for affordable housing and improved temporary accommodation for families who are still suffering as a result of losing their homes in the floods. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Member for Bakara. Some very well put points there. Call the member for Statten.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today I rise to share with the House my thoughts on rubbish in schools and parks. Research indicates that primary schools generate about 45 kilograms of waste per pupil, while secondary schools produce 22 kilograms per pupil. This totals 250,000 tonnes of waste every year. Surely this isn't good enough. Children should be introduced to the idea of getting a reward or recognition for every 10 kilograms of waste they either recycle or dispose of according to the material. Another gesture is to teach them how to recycle. By doing this, it will empower them to make changes to the planet. Children may seem small, but they're the way of the future. By teaching them and encouraging them to do better,
They will grow up and make a revolutionary change to our planet. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, thank you, Member for Statten. And I know many schools around the state and certainly around the northern Gold Coast do have programs in place to deal with the rubbish and recycling of our rubbish generated every day. Call the youth member for Ambula.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today I would like to share with the House my ideas on how to prevent teenage crime. Youth crime has currently increased by 2% from 2020 to 2021 amongst children between the ages 10 and 19. I rise to inform the House that the effects of these crimes are leaving citizens feeling unsafe in their homes or on the streets, and for some, in hospital. Due to this, we need more police available to patrol our communities. With more police, the community will start to feel safe in their homes and on the streets. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Member for Ambula. A very topical issue that you've raised there today. Call the member for Nagoa.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I inform this House that the Gold Coast Local Council has failed to install enough dog parks for public access. This is a serious concern because if dogs don't get enough exercise, they will become unhealthy, and there may be a rise in veterinary bills for their owners. Also, dog owners will get to be outside more, which will strengthen the bond between the owner and their pet, promoting physical and mental health. This is supported by research, which finds that people's mental health is improved when they care for animals. Another crucial reason for more dog parks is that it will enhance social interaction between other pet owners and build community friendships. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, thank you, Youth Member for Nagoa. I completely agree with you, and I know Division 1 Councillor, the Division 1 Councillor for the Northern Gold Coast agrees with you as well, and he's in the process of putting in 2 new dog parks on the Northern Gold Coast. In the Northern Gold Coast. Call the member for Basalt.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to speak on the issue of the increasing youth crime epidemic. People within the community are feeling unsafe for themselves and their loved ones. They are forced to update their home security systems. Data shows that from 2021 and 2022, Queensland has the highest rate of youth offenders in the country. In Australia, the most common crime caused by youth offenders is the intent to cause injury. We must petition all social media companies to stop them posting footage of their crime, as the bragging rights seem to be the main influence of these offenders. Teenagers do not seem to be worried if this shows them in a negative light. It seems to be an incentive to follow through with the crime. The censorships are already in place for the government racist hate pages from being posted on social media sites. Can we not include youth crimes to these restrictions? Our community has the right to feel safe in their own homes, and social media companies must be held to account too. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, thank you, Member for Basalt. Indeed, the Parliament has recently introduced laws around the issue of posting this type of media on social media. So be assured we've got a generation of untouchables at the moment that are being dealt with, and time will see more work done in that space. We'll call the member for Ironbark.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today I would like to shed light on the issue of our short-staffed hospitals here in Queensland. Due to COVID-19, this issue has now come to the attention of many citizens. When people have come to hospital seeking medical attention, many of their expectations have not been met. Patients have been waiting for hours just to be diagnosed or treated by a registered doctor. We should be focusing on providing the highest level of care for all of our citizens. In order to do so, the government can support future medical staff and lower the cost of university fees. Showing people how engaging a hospital environment is can encourage them to take interest in working there.
Due to the high cost of living, assistance with university fees will help medical students significantly. Support in this category will reassure not only medical staff but our communities here in Queensland. If we take action now, hospitals become a less stressful environment for all. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Member for Ironbark. Yes, it certainly is a fraught issue, and you put some very strong arguments there. Thank you very much. Call the youth member for Homestead.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Koalas. When I say this word, what comes to your mind? You're probably thinking of these cute Australian native animals, but what you should be thinking of is death. This is what our world is coming to. When building a city, it is fundamental to have a plot of land saved for wildlife, whether it be an observation area, state forest, or maybe a national park. Every city must have at least one, but there isn't enough space in these areas, forcing koalas to inbreed and have weak genetics, which leads to detrimental health issues and eventually death. This problem will only continue to grow. You can't turn your back on an erupting volcano. The solution is not a koala dating app, but more koala crossings, joining these habitats together. The result of this can delay koalas' extinction. You can help change this world for the better. I'm choosing to make a change. What are you going to do? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Member for Homestead. Yes, you put some very good points there, and we all share with your concerns around our koala populations. Call the youth member for Bowl.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I believe the government must grab a hold of our out-of-control inflation. Young people's hopes for future home ownership and other opportunities are dissipating. Our competitiveness on a world stage is at risk every day as the value of the Australian dollar drops. And the rampant cost of living increases are causing panic for families that are already struggling. I remember when I was 6 years old. I was buying a lemonade ice cream from 7-Eleven for $3. Then I come back to the same place, buying the same ice cream now, at the age of 11, except for $6. The price has doubled in the past 5 years, despite the Reserve Bank of Australia setting an inflation target of 2 to 3% annually. Our most recent data shows an increase of about 6% of the past year. Rather than increasing interest rates, which puts even more pressure on families, my solution is all levels of government across Queensland must decrease the amount of money they spend per year. Inflation must be controlled. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Member for Bowl. That was a very good example that you used there, and I don't know whether you realise it, but they're also making those ice creams a little bit smaller now than they did 5 years ago. So take that on board as well. Call the member for Fitzroy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today I bring to the attention of the House a growing issue in our society: smoking and vaping amongst young people. According to new research, more than 3.5 million Australians aged 14 and older smoke or vape, with rates growing among younger people. Social media, peer influence, marketing, family, and the internet are the biggest influences for the younger generation to try smoking or vaping. These people or things can cause a negative impact on the young minds into trying it without knowing the harm it can cause them and their healthy bodies. Vapes are a new way to get young people addicted to nicotine, which is often difficult to quit, and it can cause long-lasting negative effects on brain development. When you smoke, harmful chemicals enter your lungs and spread through your body. They can reach your organs within 10 seconds of your first puff and go everywhere your blood flows, harming every part of your body. Vaping and smoking have been linked to serious lung diseases and increases the risk of depression and anxiety. Some of the conditions and diseases that can be caused by smoking and vaping are cancer, breathing problems, heart diseases, infections, diabetes, dental problems, hearing problems, vision loss, and osteoporosis. So how are we going to stop young people from smoking and vaping? The change must come from the family, by the elders of the family being the role model, by not smoking and vaping. Educating the young people about the harmful effects of vaping and smoking is another option, and making sure that they get the right professional help when needed. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, thank you, Member for Fitzroy. That was a very strong argument that you put forward there, and certainly vaping, we're yet to see all of the real fallout from the vaping epidemic that we have now, as we have seen in the past around smoking. So thank you very much for that contribution. I call the member for Farview.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to share with the House my concerns about deforestation. On Natural Tree Day this year, the Queensland Government released a report that stated Queensland is the national leader in deforestation. In 2020 to 2021, 349,399 hectares of land was cleared in Queensland. Every tree that gets chopped down reduces the oxygen we breathe. This can also allow pollution to impact the environment instead of reducing it. Trees are supposed to soak up the carbon, but if they keep being cleared, they can't keep the surrounding air clean and fresh. We will be forced to breathe polluted air, causing damage to our lungs and body. Clearing trees doesn't only affect us, but the wildlife as well. Trees create habitats for animals like koalas and possums. Imagine if someone came in and knocked down your home, leaving you with nowhere to go. If we do not make a change now, some animals could even go extinct. Just think, every tree that falls to its death could one day be us. We must do something to stop deforestation now. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Member for Fairview. Your argument is knock down less trees and plant more trees, I would suggest. So, yeah, very good arguments put. Is there anyone on the speaking list that I have not called? No? Okay. Well, the House will now adjourn for morning tea, and thank you for all of your contributions.